How's it going, guys? Joe here. Today I thought I'd do a quick little vibe coding follow-up to that prior video that I did with the rapid moment navigator. I just want to show some lessons that I have been learning recently because I'm actually trying to fix a couple things I never thought I'd have to fix at all. And it's pretty strange what I'm dealing with right now. And I thought I'd just make a quick video showing and documenting all that and maybe show some lessons that I'm learning with vibe coding with this whole process I'm doing right now. So yeah, I just want to show you some quick stuff. So without further ado, let's just jump in. So I've been kind of essentially what I'm trying to do right now is add a few more features to the basically my rapid moment navigator that I've been working on recently. So if I were to do the rapid moment navigator, you'll notice it looks quite a bit different now. For example, I can now add directories manually and just add remove directories and make it real easy. And then what it does is I can remove the current directory if that's not applicable, but I can only remove it if there's other directories that exist, as you can see here, which is quite handy. And then recently I've been trying to add a new feature where I can import clips directly into my video editor's timeline. So like if I basically what happens, let's search, I don't know, let's just search the lucid dreaming part of this. So basically this functions like it normally does, but when I select an editor, what the heck is going on here? Some of the new features aren't working right now. Okay, that's interesting. I think I just discovered a new bug that actually wasn't there before. The vibe coding, I think, introduced this bug unintentionally. That can happen every once in a while, especially when context is lost. So normally if I have an editor selected, it adds these two buttons here. And normally it toggles, but if I start out with no editor when I first launch the program, then apparently it glitches out when I show results. And actually, I think it only happens when I first show results. Let's try this where it says none. I put in my search term. Yeah, so that just happens when my search term first comes up, and then it works from there. That's interesting. That's a bug I need to get resolved. I'm not going to do that in this video because it doesn't relate to what I want to show primarily. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting feature. It doesn't work yet, but the idea is when I say import media, it'll put the whole thing in the DaVinci Resolve timeline. And then when I say import clip, it'll do it based on this range right here. So I can here be from 2 to 204. That's a 4-second clip. It'll import, it'll actually append it to where the playhead is. At least that's the idea. Then it makes it very quick to do compilations, or if I need to import media from my home videos in general and I have them transcribed, then I can search the keyword and then import the clip directly into my editor. Now obviously the in out points won't be accurate, but it's so fast to adjust the in out point versus manually finding the media, importing it, and then finding an in out point that I could do from there. This is gonna be so much faster than the old way of doing things. So that's the feature I'm trying to add right now. I guess I gotta get that one bug resolved, but that's okay because every time new results come up, then it updates itself. So that's something that I'll fix later on. I didn't even know that bug existed actually. So yeah, so what am I trying to do right now? Well, I tried to vibe code the functionality, and what I've done is I gave it Resolve API documentation. So essentially if I go to my cursor settings, I can go to docs right here. I added the Resolve API documentation, which goes to this website. I'll maybe add it to the description of this video as well as the first vibe coding one. And this shows how to do all sorts of API functionality. So like media pool functions, which I'm not even familiar with this since I've been only vibe coding stuff. So anyway, I've been trying to, that's how I did that subtitle generator script, which is this project here. That's how I put that together. But I tried to get it working with this program. I basically tried to get the UI updated to this right here, and then also get the import feature working. But the problem I ran into is it kept losing context with the context window due to the complexity of the program, and it kept having to scan the whole folder again. There's even a point when it basically deleted all code in a file, I believe, because of lost context, and something got intermixed somewhere, I believe. So that was not good. So in order to fix that problem, I'm just doing one thing at a time and creating separate Git branches for each thing that I'm doing. And then that way, I'm just working on one feature at a time, and then I'll basically have the logic all worked out and combine them when they're both ready to go in tandem. So that's kind of how I'm handling that issue. So right now I'm trying to get the editor functionality figured out. So I have a separate branch, which is not even one that I'm going to put on GitHub, but since I was struggling with the API documentation, I'm like, so this basically the subtitle generator script works perfectly how it is. So basically just change this directly into what I want, which what I'm having it do right now is basically import the media, select the in out point, and append it to the current timeline that's open. So right here, I guess I don't have a timeline open, but if I created a new timeline, I now have a timeline open. So whatever clip I'm trying to insert from this program here, I'll just say this one. If I say import clip, what I want it to then do is go to resolve, and then the clip basically goes wherever the playhead is on the current timeline. That's what I want to have happen. So since I'm trying to develop these things independently, the way I'm making it work is doing them separately, and I'm just making direct tweaks to that Resolve subtitle generator, basically just mutating it into this new program that I want. And then I can give the other AI that program and be like, this logic works for importing media. I actually made it so that I created a function, which I believe that function exists toward the end, somewhere in the main function. It'll do basically the append to region, or append region to timeline. That's the function that basically does the actual thing. The file I'm importing is right here, and then the start and end time code. So all of it's in one function. So if there's any helper function inside there, I then make sure I include that when I copy over to the other script right here for my rapid moment navigator. Then that way the AI on a new chat thread can just be like, here's the logic for importing stuff, make it so it works with my program. And then all it has to do is really stick pieces together rather than making new pieces and then sticking them together. The pieces are tested and work on an individual basis. So I import them like this and then simply do that. Then it's more likely to work when I have it put pieces together versus making them first, which it screws up at when I do it all at once. So that's sort of the vibe coding approach I've been taking for this kind of issue. And again, this is just on a placeholder branch, which is never gonna get officially published on GitHub or anything. I'm literally just using the Resolve subtitle generated project for that temporary branch. And then I'll go to here and copy that logic for the import clip. Once I got it working successfully, I'll then get it adapted so that it works with this program's logic. When I say import clip, it'll do this file that SRT is linked to behind the scenes. and then simply do that 200 to 204 time range. And it does the F9 append function. So yeah, I'm actually doing 15 to 30 second as a example. So let me open that in Explorer, and I'll temporarily import that into here. Actually, what it's basically doing is going to basically going to the 15-second mark, creating an endpoint. I think that's what it would do behind the scenes. Then it would go to the 30-second mark, out point, and then I believe I can right click and append the clip. Append selected clip to timeline. And I think it does it wherever the playhead happens to be. Otherwise I hit F9 to accomplish the same thing. That's what I want my program here to do. And of course I have an editor selection because it works differently in Premiere Pro, Final Cut, Avid Media Composer, whatever you may be using. Since I'm using Resolve, that's the only logic I'm going to add, but I structure the program so you can easily add other editors. So if you want to add your editor, then you can create a pull request for that and basically add or vibe code your own functionality. Then we'll get it into this program. But since I only need Resolve, I'm just going to focus on what I need for now, but also future-proof it so more editors can get added. So yeah, when I say insert clip, it'll just literally append that clip right in the current timeline. At least that's the end goal. So yeah, I basically have it set up so when I run the script, it'll attempt to insert this right here. That's what it does. I hard-coded the logic for now. It's right in the main function of the Python script. So I'm gonna basically run this insert clip. And I'm running into a really strange issue right now. Sorry, import clip. So this is actually a different issue than what I was having before. So actually let me undo all this stuff that it's been doing so far because I don't want this just yet. I'm gonna actually delete this file. Basically reject all changes so I can show you the original error and how I plan to solve it. So basically when I try to run it, I get this issue null module named imp. And I actually determined that it can't even properly connect to Resolve because of the issue, which is bonkers because it works perfectly fine on my server in the Mac. So when I try to import it on here, it works fine. It doesn't run into the issue at all on the server. And when I do it on my Mac, it doesn't run into the issue on here either. But why is it that I've never run into the issue here, but I run into it on my main system? Is the AI doing something that's screwing everything up? Or is there something more to it? Well, of course there's something more to it. So essentially I have Resolve 17 right here. Whereas for my other systems I have Resolve 18. And that's the reason why it's glitching out. I'm getting that imp issue on Resolve 17, but I don't get it on my other system, most likely because of Resolve 18 or newer. So why would that even make a difference? Well, as it turns out, there's apparently a script that's actually included in all Resolve installations, which is a Python script. And it looks like this. It's basically on Windows, it's located in your program data folder. I believe I have the search result here, so if I try to open this location, yeah, this is built into Windows right there. And apparently when I run that Resolve API, this script, which has actually been there since I installed Resolve years ago, apparently it is built in. And so apparently it has to do with this, because I was actually talking to the AI about this and it made me realize that it ties with that. I was talking to it right here, I believe. So basically those scripts are different between Resolve 17 and 18. So what is the difference exactly? Well, so on Resolve 17, this is what it looks like. on Resolve 18, there's a bit more stuff. Maybe I could do a quick little diff comparison. So let me copy and paste what I have on this one. And then, come on, let me put it on this one. And let's do a quick little comparison. So as you can see, there are quite a few differences between those two files. So basically, if you look closely at it, there's a new function that exists in the version 18. So essentially, if you look at the import statements, you'll notice an imp library. But if you look at it on Resolve 18, there is no such import. So where is it used actually? Well, imp is used right here. It's used on a function called load dynamic, which I guess is built into this library right here. So why is it breaking between 17 and 18? Well, according to the AI at least, I assume this is true. Imp is no longer included in Python 17, no, Python 12 or newer. It just got removed. And it's possible that I could install it manually. I'm actually realizing that could be another potential solution. Now a little bit curious to see if that's really the case. Can I run pip install imp? This is not even a package I can install, but it's apparently a built-in library on Python 12 or older. So because I have Python, not Python 12, the 3.12 is what I meant to say, by the way. So I have Python 3.13, so imp is no longer a library. So how do they fix it? Well, you'll notice on here that load dynamic function that we're using, which is actually right here, it's not relying on imp anymore because it's manually defined over here. And this is probably like a fallback for an edge case right here. This isn't actually used when you have Resolve 18 most likely. It's kind of based on the Python version. So this basically doesn't rely on that library that doesn't exist anymore, which is why the error happens on Resolve 17 versus 18. The AI helped me realize that's what was going on. So based on all this, there's at least two solutions. You can either downgrade Python to 3.11 or older basically, or you can use Resolve 18 or newer. I personally use Resolve 18 for my computers which can do graphics acceleration. So like basically my computers where I have a dedicated GPU, because if you run that latest version on a computer that doesn't have a dedicated GPU, Resolve is a terrible experience without a GPU nowadays. But back before they added all these AI features to it, you didn't really rely on a GPU all that much. So therefore, if you're gonna use Resolve on an integrated graphics card, like my Intel NUC for example, I'll use Resolve 17 instead of 18. And then everywhere else I basically use Resolve 18, which requires a dedicated GPU, which my server, my primary computer, and the Mac all have. So basically I have a studio license. I basically need that to utilize any of those GPU features. So on my studio installations of Resolve, that's where I use 18 or newer. For my free versions of Resolve, I use 17. That's kind of how I treat everything. And that works pretty well for me. So even though my main computer does have a dedicated GPU, I only have 2 studio licenses that came with everything. So that's why I put 17 on this computer, because this server has 18 and my Mac also has 18 with the studio license. So that's why I have those version differences. And that's why my script has been working on these 2 computers, but not this one. So I'm sure that not everybody's going to even want to upgrade to 18 for reasons like that. So as a result, that means they'd have to either downgrade Python or actually do that upgrade to 18. However, it's mainly because of that script that I just showed you right here. This is mainly the reason why. It's simply referenced inside my project somewhere. So therefore, I'm going to come up with a compromise. So instead of relying on this script in the program data folder, I'm just going to copy that Resolve 18 script right here, because it will work on Resolve 17 most likely. And I'll just have this included in my project. I suppose it's like some projects require you to have a Python virtual environment to make sure that all the dependencies work and all that stuff without fail. Might also be a reason why some projects require you to use Docker instead of just running it on your raw system, because you might have all these dependency stuff and you want the environment to run correctly. So therefore you're forced to use a virtual environment with Python or Docker. But in this case, I'm going to rely on this Resolve script for my project just so that it works for majority of people. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm actually going to find this script right here, which is over here. It might be different in Resolve 19, by the way. I'm aware that that's out. I know, I just don't have the latest version right now. I'll upgrade at some point. But I'm going to put this inside my project and then make my script reference that in order to solve it. So for now, I'm just going to put it in the project folder like so. And then I'm going to ask the AI to adapt it. So originally I was working on this Rapid Media Navigator, but since this will basically be an issue on any of my projects that use Resolve API, this seemed like a good opportunity to fix the issue on the subtitle generator as well. And then I can basically adapt that same logic over to the other project, the new one with the Rapid Moment Navigator. So I basically added this new Resolve script file. And what changed right here? Another change that I made was that Pi audio library. I apparently have the issue on Windows too. I was running into that issue on here because apparently I dealt with it on the server, but I didn't deal with it here, and I discovered that it's different. The solution is based on whether you're using Windows or Mac. So I basically adapted this so that it works universally. Not sure if it works with Linux as well. I still have to test that, but yeah, what are these changes that this made? What branch am I in? Let me go to the main branch once. I'm just gonna commit the changes real quick, I guess. So I'm still in this placeholder one. So I'll just add the global Python fix. Even though I technically did a commit already, I must have a different branch where I didn't update that. So this commit just includes that global Python fix. So I'll just do added universal Pi audio fix. I don't know, something like that. This branch isn't even gonna exist at all. This is just temporary until I get that one issue fixed with the imp library. So now that I got that, I have a new script. This resolve test I don't think is relevant anymore either. I'll maybe keep it there in case I end up realizing I need it, but what I'm going to do is basically fix this issue right now. So I'll go to the main branch, which has all the stuff that I need, and then I'll create a new branch for basically the imp library. Not sure what to call it. Imp library missing. So I now have a new branch with that name, and then this is where I can apply that fix. What files are lingering right here? I guess I'll accept that, even though I'm not going to actually add it. Okay, I've just copied the Resolve 18, and I'm assuming this is universal between Mac and Windows. Again, I haven't tested Linux yet, but wouldn't hurt to check. So why don't I open up this version of the script in here. And what I'll do is I'll go on to Mac. I believe the actual location is inside the Resolve package here. Kind of expected to see a show package contents. Maybe it's inside of this DaVinci Resolve. So I think the file we're looking for is actually inside of here. DaVinci Resolve script. I really could just do the pi. Where is the DaVinci Resolve script.py on the Mac located? It might know where it is, so I'm just gonna ask it real quick. I guess it's in the application support folder. So that means I'll be going to the, is it the users library folder, or is this global? Guess we'll find out. I'll just try to go to the, where's the root? There's a library folder here. I really should just use the find command. So application support, of course Apple would do a tab autofill there. Okay, I believe it's here. So if I list this, yeah, there's the DaVinci Resolve script right there. So can I view the contents of that and put that in PB copy and then paste it right here? Is that for sure the Mac one? So I'll put testing is now what I paste. So if I run that again, yep. Okay, so that's what's on the Mac version. So let's compare this one with the Mac. They're identical. Cool. So it will be fine to put that on my project then, now that I've verified the contents are the same. Okay, so I just basically told it I put that script there. So now adapt the code so that I can create the commit around that. Whoa, stop it. This thing is mixing up everything between my projects. Okay, I basically just told it that, and I did say revert. So now hopefully it'll end up doing the correct thing. And I wanted to modify things how they are, because this is really confusing, because I'm working on a temporary branch. I'm making a change to the actual program, which I'm then gonna pull into the temporary branch. It looks like the agents are struggling to read stuff, and that's confusing. It's trying to generate a file, isn't it? I have a feeling that what the agent is reading. Oh, how about this? It thinks that it's doing this import clip.py. Let's remove that. Because it probably focused on this context instead of automatically figuring it out, and that probably confused it. There's another weird aspect of vibe coding. If you don't know what you're doing, then that's where it does the wrong stuff. So now it's automatically figuring out the context. Hopefully it'll now do it correctly. Why does it say no message there? That makes me a little nervous. Especially when I don't know what the AI is doing. But I'll try to review the changes to make sure it didn't do anything major. Let's take a look at what it's done so far. So now why is it doing what it just did there? Oh, that is part of the changes it's doing. I'm not going to be able to test to generate SRT on this computer because I can't even generate them on here. So unfortunately, I kind of want to wait to commit it until I test that before I get too crazy. So what I'll do is I'll grab what happened in this branch, maybe try to merge it into the placeholder branch and then do that test. And if that works, then I think I can assume this did too. Okay, so that seems okay because it has to do with the local directory now. So it's getting the absolute path, which I guess it's fine as long as it's the same during program execution. That's alright too. Now it's doing this logic for importing the module. I guess that's all it's doing. That seems correct because once it imports the module, it should underlyingly be the same as what it was before. So therefore, everything else should still function the same as before. And by the way, depending on how this logic works, I might be able to get rid of the need for doing any of this stuff, because on a new system, you have to set these variables. And I recommend doing that on Windows with this environment variables here, and set that stuff right there and whatnot. But you have to do that in order to run this script, which, since it's always going to be the same path, it makes sense to modify this program so that you don't even need to set those environment variables unless it's something other than the default with the operating system. In that case, I'll either store a user preference with the user defined one. I'll basically have it try the default path automatically, and if it doesn't work, then the user's going to have to custom define what that path is for them. And that'll probably go inside the preferences file. Where is it? It's not on this program, it's on this one. I'll actually probably create a preferences that defines where that is. But otherwise, the problem with the preferences is it needs to be in the same directory as the script, and if you choose to run it globally with an alias, then you're gonna actually run into problems trying to reference this because it's no longer in the same directory when you're using the alias of this. So that's the problem with the environment variable stuff. So depending on what I come up with here, I might be able to also solve that problem too, and basically get rid of this entire segment. Then it shouldn't be necessary anymore. And that's something that the vibe coding would not come up with by itself, most likely. But that is would be a nice optimization for everyone. Minimize those unnecessary steps, especially because this is probably going to be the same for just about everybody unless they change it. And we'll want to make sure this works across all the operating systems. So just hard code the default, I think. But if it's not the default, I can have it detect that, and then users can define what it is. I might even create like an input message box, so then people can define it there. Then it adds it to the preferences automatically. And they just have to do it once, hopefully. Unless they store it in several locations, depending on where they're running it, not globally. Okay. So given that we got this working, this looks correct, but I still need to test it. I'm not going to officially commit anything until I have tested it, but I think what I'll do is I'll modify that generate SRT, which is the only thing I'm doing. Resolve script for Resolve 17 or older, or Python 3.12 or newer. Basically, that's what this fix is. So then how do I get this change onto the temporary branch? Well, if I go to the placeholder branch, then what's tricky is now the file is called import clip. Well, I guess I could have this AI agent, since it's a common denominator, I could have it do it with this too, I guess. I'll have it apply that same logic. Otherwise, yeah, my version control skills were better. I could probably find a better way to bring that over without interfering with this. Realistically, I'd probably do a git merge. It might even be a individual file merge. I don't know. I could probably take the commit from, so I guess commits are on a per branch basis, which makes sense. But if I wanted to add a commit from one branch into this branch, or at least part of it, I suppose what I would end up doing is try and think of how I would do it the old git way. I guess I could bring the other file in to this commit and then do a git merge on individual files, maybe? So it's on a branch level, not a file level. Okay. So I'd have to edit them Is there a Git way of doing the manually merge? Git merge file? Really? I've never used Git merge file before. So now I'm wondering if it works similarly to Git merge, and then if it's on the same branch. I have to obviously test if that's a real thing, but interesting. So that's probably what I would have done if I did it the old Git way. I simply copy the file over. How would I copy the file exactly? From one branch to the other? I think that's where you use cherry pick, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. Is that even possible to copy a file from one branch to another? How do you check out an individual file? I know you can check out a commit. How do you check out an individual file? So you check out a branch, and then when you specify a file, does that mean it just goes to the branch to grab the file and then brings it in while it switches back? So it basically doesn't actually switch branches, or maybe it does to retrieve the file and then switches back. So I guess that's what I could do. So if I didn't use AI to apply it to this file as well, and I wanted to merge them together between those two branches, then I guess what I'd end up doing is, since they have a different name, I do git, since I'm in this branch and want to bring the other file, generate SRT, I would do git checkout this fixed branch, essentially. But then I think I would just do generate srt.py, since that's the file from the other branch. It would probably be something like that, maybe. I'd have to look into that more. I'm definitely going to do that because I'm curious now. But if otherwise I just copy and paste the file, I would temporarily copy and paste it when I switch between branches manually, I guess. And then I do a git merge file if that's really a thing. Is there like a help for that? Yeah, it looks like it's a real thing according to this. So I guess that's what I would have done if it wasn't for AI here. So let's see if it applied the logic correctly. Yep, same thing. I just want to make sure it didn't do some human error. When AI makes a mistake, can we still call it human error? I mean, after all, it's humans that designed this system. So, yeah, what does that count as? Well, that does seem to be the same as what it did before, so let's accept that. Let's create a commit for that. Let's call it that. I'll do the same thing because this is in the temporary branch. And I am for sure in the temporary branch, right? Good. If I'm not sure what branch I'm in, I'd probably want to check that before doing a commit. Anyway, let's see if it fixes that original issue that I'm trying to solve. So I have this all ready to go. I have a current timeline open. The Mr. Robot file that I'm doing as a test exists. So I'll do, yeah, the imports clip. So let's see if it connects properly now. I think I resolved that DVR issue. And I think I have a different chat thread for the actual import clip. Or maybe that's this one. Load older messages. I didn't realize the AI agent had checkpoints. That might be easier. So it might still have context on what I'm originally trying to do. So this is a problem that I don't think I originally wanted to record this, by the way. But then this way, I should be able to run the script and then add a debug flag, and then it'll have debug output when I run it. Then I can see if this thing can then figure out why nothing happened when I tried running it. But yeah, once I get this logic worked out, I'll then come back to this project and basically integrate the logic into the program. The program is essentially gonna parse out the clip that I'm doing and the time range. but then it otherwise just piggybacks off the function that I designed for importing the clip based on the start and end time code here. So that's essentially what how I'm going to integrate it. And I'll see if this can do it with a different chat thread. And then, yeah, that should be all I need to do to get that working. If I can get all this logic working, then that's pretty much all I need to do. But yeah, very strange problem. And even though I'm vibe coding, you kind of have to treat things in a certain way, otherwise it's going to be difficult to troubleshoot. And I feel like more normie style people who don't specifically go into software engineering stuff, while they might be able to do some software engineering with this, when they run into problems, that's where most of the challenges arise. When it works, then good for them. Oh wow, so it added a lot of diagnostic info. So now I'm gonna have it run it with the debug flag so that it can basically read the output and figure out what's going on. So I can let it troubleshoot stuff. Hey, it's running the wrong script. So I happened to catch that, but now I'm going to have it run the import clip file with the debug flag because it started doing the wrong file. This is why you have to be so explicit. You literally sometimes have to treat this like a toddler who has a very short attention span. That is kind of how you have to treat the AI agent sometimes. Especially with the current stage that it's at. I don't know why it's having to read so much of the project structure. Some of the context may have been lost. See, now it's doing this log redirection, which it shouldn't have to do if the debug flag is actually working correctly. It never specified it, but I think it should have. I'm telling it to stop. I think you have to add debug to the command you're running. Let's see if that helps with the program output. Oh, I guess it might not have outputted anymore. Well, I guess if it has to do that just for debugging purposes, then fine. I'll clean that all up later once I get it worked out. This is not what I'm making the video for, by the way. But then this way you can also see where vibe coding can go wrong and why you should have some skill to help navigate those issues. I just kind of wanted to show some lessons I've been learning with the issues I'm currently running into and how I've been refining a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I'm actually making quite a few changes right now. Like I'm trying to resolve that imp issue, fix the environment variable support, then of course make it so it's easy to run an alias so you can run this script on any directory without having to copy it to other directories. But yeah, if you want a basic rundown of that, essentially what I've done is in Windows I created an environment variable. Oh, not on this computer. Right here. I basically created an environment variable called resolve sub, and I basically pointed it to the project directory. And then the actual PowerShell alias looks like this. And I think when it didn't work in Mac the other day on the part 1, it's because I forgot this on my Mac alias most likely. If I get that working, then that might fix everything I ran into. Regardless, I'll add some instruction for how to do the alias once I get that working. So yeah, right now it can probably solve this problem all by itself. That is strange that it's not outputting the debug information. You'd think it would. But yeah, like see, I could go outside right now and let this run for a while, and it might end up figuring it out all by itself. Although with it using an API and a program with a user interface that it can't perceive on its own, who knows if that'll end up working. But yeah, what it's doing right now is not really part of what I wanted to show you. I think I've shown the main gist, which was that imp issue that I showed, and how sometimes you have to be clever and essentially work with the strengths that it currently has. Because yeah, the AI agent will struggle with certain things with its current stage, but you can sometimes do tricks to basically allow it to still utilize the strength that it currently has in its current state. And yeah, sometimes that might take a bit of programming knowledge. Might be a little bit hard to do if you don't do a lot of programming. But yeah, this is still very much in its early stages. But it's still really cool because now I'm able to work on some projects that would otherwise take a bunch of time where I can't justify the time commitment. Thanks to being able to give it... Ooh, it doesn't even have documentation context right now. That's interesting. I should probably give it that context. See, now I want to stop this so I can give it context, but who knows. Otherwise, I think that'll be all I wanted to show you for now. Perfect. Yeah, when it does 25 tool calls, it'll stop by itself, and then now I can inject the... Well, where are the resolved docs now? What the heck? Right now, it seems to think that the docs don't even exist, which is really odd. I'm going to give it that same link and see if that helps at all. And just call it that. That's the entry point. Let's see if it reads it now. Yeah, that's kind of weird. We might be dealing with a strange clip or issue. I'm telling it to continue. I also told it the docs are gone. And by the way, I'm using a different mic than I used in the last video. I've been wanting to test this for a while, but I didn't want to do it on an official video necessarily. This seemed more like a test video. This seemed like a good opportunity to see how the mic actually works. I think it's pretty good so far. I didn't have to change many settings for the filters or anything. Oh, given that it's running into an issue when it tries to import the script. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to fix that before I commit it to the main branch. Otherwise, I'm basically taking down production, if you will. I don't want that. I'm not gonna do that in this video because I think I went over my main point. So for now, that's gonna be it. Okay, here I am a few days later with another status update in this follow-up. So I've done a little bit more testing and I've noticed a few other things that I thought I'd just do a quick update on. So first of all, pretty much no matter what I tried, I struggled to get things working on my primary system with Resolve. So for whatever reason, Resolve just wouldn't connect to the API on my primary system. And then I realized the version could have to do with it. So what I stated before was that you basically have to have Resolve 18 or newer if you're going to use modern versions of Python. Otherwise, you could potentially use older versions of Python with 17 or older with Resolve. And I think that primarily has to do with that imp module, which basically has to do with importing libraries or treating local scripts as a library inside of another script. So like that DaVinci Resolve script library, which is inside the C drive or whatever. So inside of program data, if you do DaVinci Resolve script, that's one of the modules that's built into the Blackmagic design program data. If I could get the zoom all fixed, yeah, the program data Blackmagic design. So there's, yeah, you're trying to reference this and using imp to import this custom module as a library. But the modern way involves using a different library in Python, I believe. So that's why you basically use Python 3.11 or older with Resolve 17 or older. Otherwise, you basically have to use Resolve 18 or newer with the modern versions of Python, which has a more modern implementation of that script. So that led me to do a bunch of testing with the script. In order to get it working on my system, I need to find a version where that imp library is no longer in use. Because if you're going to use that library for importing other libraries, you do need Python 3.11 or older. And I can't run that on Well, I should say I can't use it with Resolve 17 with that old library method. So I need Python 3.11 or older to use the older version of Resolve API. So that then led me to do a bunch of trial and error to figure out where this script is. So this is that script that's basically responsible for doing the API integration. And this is a modern script, so basically I need to figure out where the modern script starts. And through a bunch of trial and error, so I have Resolve 18.6 right there. I usually use 17.4.6, primarily because it's so clean and lean due to not having all the AI features yet. And I prefer to have it that way on where I'm using the free version of Resolve. So I did a bunch of trial and error, and I determined, I believe it's 18.6 that they stop using IMP. So if you're using 18.5, you still need Python 3.11 or older, even with Resolve 18.5, but 18.6 I believe is where they changed all this finally. So I wasted a lot of time on trial and error trying to figure that out. And then as far as Python goes, I wanted to have Python 3.13 on my system, not have to downgrade, but I also learned through this process that aside from virtual environments in Python, you could use py as a command to launch different versions of Python. So like if I do this py 3.13 and I look up the version, then it runs it as what I use globally as shown down here. This is the global interpreter that I have selected. But then I can also go to py 3.11 and then it runs it as that version. And each respective version has their own pip package manager. So this is how you run a script as a different version, and it's pretty straightforward. All you really have to do is download Python with that version as well. So like if I wanted to get something newer than 3.12, then I would do like basically install Python the standard way. So if I wanted 3.11, then I would go, ordinarily you'd go here, but since this is a bug fix, this is not compiled. You'd have to compile it yourself if you want that. So basically you have to find a version that doesn't require you to compile it, which in my case I believe is 3.11.9, which is down here. If you download that one, then you can download the installer, and then you install it just like any Python script. And while you're installing it, basically I wouldn't add it to the system environment path, mainly so that your main Python version still runs as it does globally, because all this is doing is adding another runtime. So if I were to do like 3.10 for example, there's no runtime. So I would just use the installer to get a runtime for this essentially. So then basically I don't add it to the path in order to make that happen, and then all the other default settings I still do. Why don't I find some sort of 3.10 that I can install? Let's see, probably 3.10.9 also. Yeah. So let's install this for argument's sake, just so I can show you the install process. So basically I leave this box unchecked right here. Then I'm not really doing any custom install. I just install it the way I normally do right there. And then that'll essentially add the runtime as needed. Then if I want to, run a script at a specific version, I just do py, then the version, and then the script. In this case, import clip. And then if I need to install a package to that version, then I do -m pip install, then whichever thing I'm installing. That's all I need to do to modify that pip package manager right there. So if people needed to run as an older version, that's the way it would be done, as I discovered recently. But yeah, as I noticed, it seems that Resolve 18.6 is when Python support got improved, I guess. So yeah, I did a clean install of Resolve because I was kind of hoping to get it fixed so that it actually does work. And I figured there might be some residual files left over because one thing that I noticed on here was if I go to that Blackmagic design folder right here, and I go to, well, if I just go to that folder, I deleted this folder to make sure that I was doing a clean install, but I was having ownership issues for whatever reason. Like even when I went in here to take ownership of the file, I needed permission from myself to be able to delete the folder, even when I took ownership and basically allowed myself to have full control over this specific folder. So I think some permissions got a little bit corrupted here. So what I ended up doing is I just booted this in gparted so that I could use Linux to delete the file, because that doesn't care about the permissions. And then that worked. And then I tried installing the other version of Python, which worked, but I was still having issues. And I tried version 18.1, which is still too early. It still requires Python 3.11 or older. So I kept trying and figuring out which version it was. And I discovered that I am able to delete this folder now. Before I couldn't, so the ownership is not corrupted anymore, so that's kind of nice. But it still wasn't working, even though on the server I have everything set up, so it doesn't run into any issues when it tries to import a clip or basically interact with the Resolve API. So yeah, basically I should clarify the issue I was having is the API just wouldn't connect. I could try it here once. So if I ran the script, which will import that sample Mr. Robot file, if I do Python import clip, it's struggling to get the Resolve object because it's not a supported version with the API. It thinks Resolve isn't even running, which it very much is. And I could add a new timeline, which is usually required. And if it works correctly, it should import the clip just fine. But even how it is right now, it's still going to think that Resolve is not running. So then I try to run it with Python 3.11, the import clip. No pydub, so I'll do py-3.11-m. Come on, if I can type right. Pip install pydub. That might be a required dependency. I should probably add that. So then I'll try to run it again. For some reason I'm not getting any logged output anymore, which is interesting. Well, with the debug flag, which the AI configured on the script to add a debug flag, and then when it's not specified, there's less output when the script runs. So yeah, for some reason, it just seems like it won't connect to Resolve no matter what I'm trying. What in the world could possibly be going on here? I'm literally using 18.6.6, which very much uses the new version of this right here. So why would that not be working? Because if I try to run it here, it'll work fine. So I have a timeline open right now, and I should be able to import things successfully if it works. And since I'm using the 18.6.6, just like on my primary system, why would it work on here but not there? That just doesn't make any sense. If I try it now, it should work fine. Well, it didn't import successfully just now because there's been some modifications made recently. So if I temporarily stash those changes so I can go back, then I could do a, well, let's try it now with how it is since I stashed those recent changes to what would become another commit. Let's try it now and see if it works. Yeah, see there, it just imported both clips that I had to try it with. It was able to do that just now. So if this is not imported at all, then I delete all this, and if I run the script, it does import everything successfully right here. The version is the same. Pretty much everything about it is the same except for the fact that I'm using Studio instead of the free version. Not really sure if that would make a difference though. So in order to test that I really did a clean install on my primary system and to make sure that there was no residue left, I ended up using Revo uninstaller, which sometimes when you install or uninstall programs, there will be programs left behind. So Revo uninstaller can do an advanced scan and determine what that is after a standard uninstall has been performed. And then you can figure out if there's anything left over and delete those if you want, including registries. So I did that, rebooted my system, installed this version, rebooted my system again. It's worth noting that when you install Resolve, it'll typically require you to reboot your system on Windows. But when I didn't delete all the files before, it wasn't requiring a reboot after I successfully installed. But then after doing Revo and then installing Resolve, then Resolve needed me to do a reboot to complete the install. So there was clearly something left over that prevented a reboot from being required, which is kind of odd. So I did that, and even after doing a full clean slate, it just won't connect to Resolve for some reason. And I was getting hung up and miserable over this. And I think my computer is sort of an exception right now, unless it is because I have the free version. But for now, since it works on the server, I'm just gonna do that and assume that's how it is for everybody else. If there's more problems, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I've made myself miserable enough over this already. In fact, I was living in denial with the AI about the fact that specifically this computer that wouldn't connect, and I assumed that the AI was introducing new problems, but it was pretty clear even when I ran the script that was working on here. It was working on here. Then I ran that very same version of the script on my system and it wasn't working, but nothing should have been different. This is all the same. I have a supported version of Resolve right here. That should work just fine. I mean, the versions are identical between the server and this. 18.6.6. So why would that cause issues? Well, I don't know, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. It is pretty frustrating though. So the studio version could be a difference, but who knows. But yeah, as I developed the import stuff, I just ended up putting the issues aside with the different computers and how it connects to the API. Like this one doesn't connect. I just put that issue to the side because every other machine seems to work fine. I did a test on the Intel NUC as well. This has Resolve 17 right here, and it didn't work no matter what I did here either. I didn't try to reinstall 18 on this machine, but with an older version of Python, it doesn't work with 17, unfortunately. And you do need to set some environment variables in order for this to work. You have to set this Python path and then these two variables right now at least. Otherwise you'll get a module not found error when running the script. I discovered that when I ran it on this system. But I'm hoping in the future to make it so you don't need those environment variables and can set defaults much easier. So I'll try to get that set in the future. But yeah, some really odd problems, and this is where I was starting to think that vibe coding is not really the best way to go with this. Because some of the issues that happened were actually struggles with the AI, where I believe that if I understood the underlying code, I would have been able to avoid quite a few problems that I ended up running into throughout this whole process. I mean, what it has is fine, to be clear, but there were certain things that if I knew how the API worked, I could have avoided certain problems that I ran into. Eventually, I got there with a bunch of back and forth interaction with the AI, but if I knew how the API worked, things could have been a lot more straightforward. In fact, that's where I would think of the AI as more of a coding partner rather than an actual replacement where you delegate the task to it and just hope for the best. That's not always the best way to go, especially when you run into deep problems like this. Because, I mean, when you run into problems with the AI agentic coding, a lot of the problems could actually be reduced or even prevented by understanding the underlying code yourself. Because, yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't always feel that comfortable trying to do programming like this where I don't even understand how things work underneath the hood, because a lot of problems that I run into are literally from things that I didn't know were happening under the hood, where if I did know it, I could be like, this is definitely a problem. This shouldn't be happening. And once you get through the API documentation for Resolve, it's honestly relatively straightforward that I think it's worth taking a little bit of time to just go through this and understand what's happening. At least at a pretty basic level, then you know what to look for. Because, yeah, even with this, I noticed, if we look at all the Python scripts here, there's actually some sample projects here. And if you look at this one, for example, this is a very simple script that is basically about inserting a clip. I mean, it's a little bit different, but there's this whole append to timeline. And yeah, you can select the start and end points and be able to easily add it. But look at how straightforward this is compared to the script that I have been using right here. It's a lot more straightforward in a lot of situations, so there might be unnecessary complexity right here. I mean, for the most part it works, but yeah, so if I understood what was happening underneath the hood, there's probably a lot of things that would probably be simpler. It's hard to say for sure, but I think there is definitely merit into understanding what's happening underneath the hood, because yeah, now we're running into problems where programmers don't really know what they're doing because they're relying on AI and not taking the opportunity to learn what's going on. That causes a lot of issues. Because, yeah, there are certain things that it's going to overlook every once in a while. And if you have no idea that's what's going on underneath the hood, there could be some underlying problems you don't even know about because you don't know how it was built. That's a bad idea. So that's where I would use it as a coding partner, and then you can basically overlook everything. Overlook is not the right term, oversee. You can basically oversee the whole project, and yeah, then you can identify issues, and then when issues do arise, then you can easily have a better idea on how to solve the problem. But if you don't know how it works underneath the hood, you might be able to get some ideas, but yeah, it's going to be kind of tricky otherwise. Something I've also found very helpful as I get the functionality to work is illustrating to the AI my overall mindset that I'm having at the moment. It might seem like a waste of time to describe that, but you'd be surprised how many things it tries to infer that it doesn't end up aligning with your mindset, and therefore it'll take the wrong path. But if it can see where you're coming from pretty clearly, then it'll think along those lines a lot more, which is great. I found it extremely helpful on numerous occasions where it could tell where I'm coming from, and then it'll think along those lines more than, let's just say, generic lines where it is totally wrong. Then I also have some occasions where it basically removes certain functions that were critical, and whether it had to do with lost context or just making a change and then not knowing the context in which it applies, then it basically breaks stuff. So that's where it's kind of critical for the AI to have the context of where everything is needed and where certain things apply. Because just because a function is there doesn't mean that it knows the reason that it exists. And sometimes it'll change certain things in a function when it doesn't know the original purpose of that function, and then it deviates from that original purpose. So that's where if you treated AI more like a coding partner, you can make sure that stuff doesn't happen. I'm certainly glad that I split up this functionality, because originally I'm trying to add it to my rapid moment navigator, but the problem with that is while I'm running into all these problems with resolve and appending or inserting into the timeline based on where the playhead is located. And if I did this based on my whole application, it would be focusing on things that aren't even the central problem. So I kind of split the functionality based on, like, just get this resolve logic working, and then I'll add that to this. But getting the resolve logic working was so hard because using the API is not as easy as you would think. So treating it like a separate application that I'm developing is very helpful in that sense. Then I can just focus on the API stuff, which it struggles with. It deviates easy. I have to keep bringing it back on track for what I'm originally trying to do. And if I had my rapid moment navigator on top of all that, that would only make the effect even worse. But if I can make this into a single function where it basically takes a path to the video I'm inserting, and then I can specify a start and end time code, then that makes it pretty easy to then add to the rapid moment navigator project. So yeah, it's definitely nice to separate that out, and I've had massive benefits with that throughout this whole thing. So yeah, I've had several struggles trying to get it to properly append to stuff, and I've had several times where I notice it doing something, and then the logged output that it observes when it runs terminal commands, it tends to be different than what I'm perceiving, and then I can tell it that. And I have been strictly supervising it because I've noticed certain things that it probably didn't know, and I can always make sure it goes on the right path when I constantly supervise it. But yeah, so then I try to have it append to the timeline, and regardless of where the playhead is, it just adds it to the very end, which I might not always want. Because what if I want a clip to go right here? Well, ordinarily I can go here, select the start and end range, and then I can hit F9. It automatically inserts it right there, then ships everything over. But with the API script, it didn't really do that. Append just brings it to the end of the file like that, regardless of where the playhead is. And actually that overwrote what was there just now, I believe. So that's overwrite. That's replace script or replace clip. So then I described how I wanted it to be based on the timeline position, and then the API script ended up reading where the playhead is positioned. Like right now it's 1201, so then it would insert based on that. But then what would happen is it could insert, but if there's not enough room for it, it only inserts what it has enough room for. So like right here we got a 2-second gap. If I'm inserting a 10-second clip, only 2 of those seconds would go here. And I'm struggling to get the API to shift all the clips down as needed. And therefore, if there's any markers, it would struggle to shift that down too. Whereas on here, it's pretty easy when you hit F9. And no matter what I was trying, it tried like 5 or 10 different approaches and none of them work as expected. So then I got this idea to, it looked like it was actually doing some in-place XML stuff earlier on here. So then I tried to get it to do that, to basically grab the current time code, everything to the right of that, offset it by the length of the clip that's being inserted, then insert the clip. That's an idea that it probably wouldn't have came up with on its own, but unfortunately, according to the API documentation, that's not really possible to do. So I'm either gonna insert it and hope it has enough room for everything, which I don't think that's gonna work very well, because a lot of times this is literally no gap here at all right now. If there's no gap, then it won't be able to insert anything at the playhead. So appending to the timeline, while that's not ideal, at least you'd be able to, so like that wasn't at the end of the timeline, I guess, but that was. So even if it's not where I want it to be, at the very least you could create a marker for where you want to insert something, go to the end, cut, and then Control Shift V, and that'll make room for it. To me, that seems like a happy medium, because I don't want to do stuff involving keyboard shortcuts. That's just not going to be reliable. Getting it to work reliably on all operating systems is going to be too much of a nightmare, and I certainly don't expect to accomplish that with vibe coding, so I'm not going to do that. So since it is able to easily append to the end of the timeline, I think that seems like a reasonable compromise. Because yeah, if I wanted to put it right here, then I could just put a marker for where I need to jump back to, cut, and then Control Shift V, and then boom. Even though it's not ideal that I have to go to the end of the timeline, well, technically I could probably go to the end and keep the playhead in place without moving the playhead to the end. That might be a little tricky if you have to zoom way out and the clip is really small, but I still think that's a better alternative than not being able to fit the clip where it is. And yeah, so like right there, I just accidentally overwrote some of this, and I can tell because of where I placed the marker. Everything between here and here was overwritten just now. I can see how I wouldn't even know that. So yeah, the insert behavior that it was able to come up with, it didn't overwrite anything, but it also didn't shift everything. When it shifts everything over like that, it's basically a ripple edit. So like right here, if I want to move this to here, where the playhead is, that's a ripple paste that I just did, or a ripple insert. That's where it shifts everything to the right to make room for it. That's a ripple insert. I cannot get the AI to vibe code a ripple insert. I've tried several different methods, but I think it's pretty conclusive that it's not possible with the current version of the API. That function might be a bit limited, so I'm not going to go that route. So as you can see, I'm running into vibe code issues that I can't solve. And while I didn't get super involved with the code, I did need to get super involved with what was going on and come up with different ideas. Because yeah, then it started doing stuff like that keyboard shortcut stuff, or basically exporting XML, modifying it, and then re-importing it, which, while that would work too, I do not want to have to re-import a timeline for everything that's inserted. That's just not going to work very well. That would be a bad experience, I think, so I'm not going to do that. So yeah, because then I can oversee what the user experience will be like, and I don't want it to be a bad one. So that's why I oversaw the process and came up with ideas for basically the best compromise given all the situations. So yeah, this is what I've essentially learned recently, so still not quite done with it yet, but I thought I'd just give a quick update and how vibe coding is definitely very much in its infancy stages, and I mean, part of it is working with an API like this, but when you're dealing with the real world complex programs, yeah, you definitely need to have some experience with what you're doing. Otherwise, when you run into problems, how are you going to even solve them? Give up? I mean, that's an option, but is it the best one? Probably not even going to be acceptable in a lot of situations, especially when you have customers and you have to ship out products. So, yeah, that wouldn't be a good solution. Anyway, that is going to be it for real now, so I'll bring myself to the real outro. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know. I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's it. So thanks for watching and have a good one. Peace.